welcome. So today is episode 4 and I'm going to be talking to Karen. Karen was actually one of my teachers while studying nutritional therapy at the College of Naturopathic Medicine. And we met in, I'm guessing it was about 2015, I think. And yeah, so just to give a bit of introduction, I think as one of my instructors, I really appreciated how you made things very practical and accessible. And it was the first time I had a real eureka moment in terms of like how to do a consultation. And I realized it's like a mathematical formula. And to explain a little bit, we ask people lots of questions going through, you know, symptoms, and there will be crossover points where multiple things will correspond to the main symptoms. And then that all kind of proves itself as you get to the end, seeing the systems under stress and then where somebody needs help. And I think when I realized that, it was just a big like relief, because otherwise there's just so much information. It's very overwhelming. It's very stressful trying to do it. We had to do obviously clinics and do them in a certain amount of time, which is stressful. But yeah, realizing there was a formula was a real relief for me. So we're going to talk today a little bit about Karen's journey in terms of her professional development to where she got to today with Team Gene. And then I'm hoping we can also discuss a few sort of bigger topics in a general way, but protein being one of them, genes just in general, nutrigenomics and healthy diets, if we can touch on that a little bit. But yeah. So welcome, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much for inviting me. It's lovely to experience all these different things and how to do podcasts and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Okay. So I think if you wouldn't mind starting from before you were interested in nutrition, a little bit, I guess, of what led you into it, and then sort of what were, I guess, key milestones on that journey, essentially.
So I came out of college and primarily went into hospitality. So I used to, run housekeeping departments and reception, and then I sort of migrated into restaurants. And I was lucky enough to go to the other side of the world and run a restaurant out there. And I guess really it was out there that I started to realise, because the Aussies tend to be a little bit more sort of understanding of perhaps Mother Earth and sort of how things work, not to say that we don't. But yeah, there was more sort of discussion about food and what it does and how it might sort of play out. And if you eat perhaps a little bit more naughtily, then other things might happen in later life and those sort of things. Nothing in detail, but it was all very sort of, if we carry on eating like this, is this going to have an impact?
Was that the first time you thought along those lines in terms of like, what we eat? And,
because in hospitality or in hotel work, it's long hours. You literally eat on the go, and that's just all you know, really. Or that's all that I knew anyway. Let's put it that way.
I did a lot of waitressing too.
Oh, absolutely.
It's hard work.
So, so I did the lovely time in Australia. I came back to the UK, and it was just one of those moments. So I'd switched on the computer, and there was an advert for a nutrition college. So I started my nutrition career. I studied that part-time, as most people do. In that stage, I was actually in admin, so I had more control over when I could eat and have access to a kitchen. Of course, in hospitality, you don't have that. Which obviously impacts your capability of what you can and don't want to eat. So I did that, and then I just thought to myself, well, this is lovely. I've done a diploma. Actually, I want to learn a bit more about the science. So I did an undergraduate in nutritional science for 3 years. And I came out of there, and I was really lucky in that I managed to get a couple of jobs, of which one of them was teaching at C&M. And that's a really interesting sort of story about that, was because I was in London, and I hope nobody's offended, but I needed to go for a wee. So I was near C&M, obviously knew where it was. I'd been a student there.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, they won't mind me just going in and using the loo. So I literally went in there, and all of a sudden, the director of education came out of her office, which was on the way.
Yeah.
She went, oh, Karen. I went, yes. I thought, oh, no, I'm
Guilty.
just guilty
Yeah.
before I've even done anything. She went, you wanted to do some lecturing, didn't you?
Oh, amazing.
And I went, yeah, could you just hold that thought? I just
1
need
minute.
some wee. Do you mind?
Oh,
She went,
bless.
no, not at all. And that literally is just how it all
Wow,
started.
that's really cool. That's quite like good fortune. Amazing.
So occasionally, needing a loo leads to
Can
all
be
sorts of
helpful.
different things.
Yeah, that's really funny. And then along this time, were you also experiencing for yourself any like major, I don't know, journey in terms of your own health? Because I know for me studying, it definitely was a big eye opener in terms of, I guess like I was my best guinea pig really, you know, to try stuff on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've never been a very, very thin person. I've always, you know, been on the upper end of the scales, depending on my age and lifestyle and that sort of stuff. And yes, I guess really, you know, sort of growing up with a traditional Western sort of food intake. Yes, of course, I now know what I should and shouldn't be eating, but I am also real, which I do know that a lot
Brilliant.
of students sort of quite like, is I do know that there are times when I'm really busy and I do have a chocolate bar.
Yeah.
And, or I don't know, it was a couple of weeks ago, I went to a takeaway and I had fish and chips. And it was, I really enjoyed it. But, you know, being in the nutrition world, you're occasionally students sort of put you on a bit of a pedestal. Oh, I'm sure she doesn't eat this and eat that. But yeah, I do, you know, because.
Yeah, I think it's important.
And also I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I am better now, but I do perhaps sort of take the 80-20 rule to a max.
That's great, yeah.
That's what I do.
I think it's really, yeah, being honest for myself, I think that was a really, like my study time kind of went from obviously not understanding a lot of like health and what's helpful to me to starting to understand, to going to like extreme perfectionism, you know, like, and then, but almost like a very judgmental, critical attitude of like everyone else and like I'm safe because I'm living on this pedestal. And then after graduating, realizing like, A, it's not sustainable forever for sure. And B, it's not that much fun. Like you're not really enjoying your life if all you do is stick to this regimen. Yeah, so I feel like it's really important. I'm really glad you said that because I think it's an important thing to share. And I mean, me being the guiltiest one of all, being like judgy, but yeah, I try to backtrack on that.
No, I mean, there are people that do have to be very strict in what they're eating, particularly if they're a celiac. I mean, you know, you just have to be gluten-free completely. That is unfortunately just how it goes. But if you are somebody that doesn't have those types of sort of conditions and, you know, you do have a busy life, but you want to be as healthy as you can, you, in my opinion, you really can only do it 80-20 because that 20% is the times when literally you just don't have time. You've got to go and pick the kids up. You've got to go and, you know, go to multiple meetings throughout the day, even if they're online. You know, you don't have the ability to go downstairs and put the bread maker on and, you know, do all that wonderful stuff. And so, yeah, it's just, I guess sometimes I just have to remind myself and go, no, actually, Karen, let's do a plan this week and be as good as possible.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's very realistic. Okay, so moving on a little bit. So you went into teaching, but as well, I think running your own clinic. Do you want to share a little bit about having a clinic and I guess, yeah, how that worked, what was good, what was not so good?
So I love being in clinic. So that I've been lucky enough to be sort of in clinic from a personal, as in my own, you know, clinic looking after clients, but also I've been lucky enough to supervise students in clinics. So I've done quite a few hours in clinic either way. But for my own personal clinic, it's, you mentioned it earlier on with regards to aha moments. I love it when, you know, when your clients actually get it. Like, if you do this, or if you increase your protein to this, or if you, you know, X, Y, and Z, and they're interested and they do actually at least try it and feel, and if they do feel some benefit, that's brilliant, because they'll come back and tell you, you know, multiple times, which is amazing. But the other side is also the fact that I'm obviously a lecturer and a supervisor for, you know, clinics and supervising students. So it's actually seeing them and their aha moments, where their clients come back and go, yeah, I have done this, and yes, I do feel better. And I can see them going, really? I've only asked you to change this, this, and this. But yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah, it's a good. Yeah, I when I was like seeing people for my own sort of clinic, I kind of said, even if you only do like 40% of what I suggest, that's amazing. And even that, I think, is quite high. It's a lot of changes and considerations that someone has to really spend time on and think about. But also, it's so tricky. I don't know. I feel like it's been tricky for me, anyways, as a business model, because I think a lot of people come with like wanting the quick fix, or the take the pill and fix everything, and aren't always ready to like look into actually working on themselves or looking at things. So yeah,
I feel a lot of practicing is actually helping people to set their own expectations. And unfortunately with food, it's not a quick fix, unless it's gluten and you're celiac. Yeah, of course. But you know, it's not a quick fix. It does take time, and there are multiple other possibilities that could influence an outcome. You know, the environment, toxins, all sorts of different things. And so therefore, I think where we've got used to medications, take the medications and it does that. But where we're trying to perhaps, you know, help clients with how they're eating, or perhaps reduce something or increase something else, you know, it takes a while for it to sort of, you know, for them to get round of what they've got to do and understand it, for them to go out and get the right food in the first place, and then they can actually incorporate it. So you've got 3 steps before you actually get to the end thing and actually eating the way that person's asked you to do that. So it's all about managing that person's expectations, that the food is not the magic pill. It will get you at the end. It will get you there at the end, but it's not going to be instant, unlike a medication, hopefully.
Yeah. How much of a success rate did you find? Like, do you think 40% is accurate or hopeful, or too optimistic?
So I think where you were coming from with regards to your 40% was like, you know, here's my plan. If you do 40% of it, I mean, you know, I do see students' plans and they go on for blinking. I could go on for miles, let alone pages. It could go on for miles. Because we're just trying to fix that person in that one go, because of the model that you're all, you know, you're all sort of going through. But no, for me, I tend to have around about an 80% success rate.
That's
I
great.
would say.
Oh wow!
But I've learnt to rein it all in. I've learned that I only give people, I give them maximum 6 things to do.
Got it.
And even then, they can choose 3 things, and they choose what they want to do.
That's interesting.
And then they have chosen what they want to do. It's not me dictating
quite
empowering
to them.
So yes, it's about setting those boundaries.
Yeah, mine was usually like 10 to 12. Very much in the student style. Like I didn't really evolve from that.
No.
So that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Okay, so I guess we can move on a bit to talking about, I guess it's around COVID time. So you said you did a master's in, was it in nutrigenomics or just genetics? Okay, so nutrigenomics. So very simply, what is nutrigenomics?
Well,
how many hours have we got?
Absolutely. So it's all about the reaction of either your genes towards the food you're eating, and they can have quite a big sort of impact on how how your body replicates, basically. So all the time, as we're sitting here, as people are listening to this, we are making new liver cells, we're making new skin cells, we're basically replicating our DNA. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And nutrigenomics is all about the food that you're eating can have an impact on sort of the recipe that's being made, I guess, really. But also the other side of the coin is actually the genes themselves can be affected not only by what you're eating, but what you're eating can also affect the genes. So it's like a two-pronged approach. One is nutrigenomics, one is nutrigenetics. So it's all about sort of, is it the food that you're eating that there is a problem, or is it the fact that your genetic code means that really that particular food is not brilliant for you? So it's really all about, so again, it's nutrition and genetics. Basically, how do the two interact?
And what can someone hope to understand from?
So what we can hope to understand is, so when we're making our, whatever it is we're making, cells or whatever it might be, unfortunately for some people, that particular gene will code, let's say, for an enzyme. Okay, and for some people, when the body's actually making this particular, so it goes from DNA into RNA and then into a protein. Now, from DNA, which is our master sort of instruction booklet, it gets known as transcribed into RNA. Now, in that, the way that I guess really put it into easier way to remember that is DNA is your recipe booklet or book, and then RNA is the one recipe that you're wanting to make. Let's choose something nice like a lemon drizzle cake, for instance. Yeah. Now, of course, that might be making a liver cell, but let's just say it's a lemon drizzle cake. Okay.
Yep.
Now, in that translation or transcription, as it's called, there can be some spelling mistakes.
Yes.
Okay. So these are called SNPs. They're called single nucleotide polymorphisms. Now, what it means is that enzyme is going to be produced, but because there's spelling mistakes in it, the enzyme might not actually either act in the way that we're expecting it to. So it still produces the enzyme, but normally what happens is that enzyme is a bit slower in doing what it's supposed to do, or it's a bit faster in what it's supposed to do. So if we bring that back to the cake analogy, lovely lemon drizzle cake, but what happens if the word sugar was accidentally replaced with salt? So we would still get a lemon drizzle cake,
Right.
but it's not going to be edible.
Yeah.
Or somebody might eat it rather slowly, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay.
So you'll get the end result.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of not saying there are some genetics, insertions and deletions where people have all sorts and other diseases can develop. The bit that I'm really more interested in from a genetic perspective is from a food perspective, hence why it's nutrigenomics, it's nutrition and genetics. So what does your nutrition, or what does nutrition do to your genes, basically?
That's a really great analogy. So, okay, partly I understand that obviously worldwide, science-wise, our understanding of DNA evolved at a certain point. You might know when specifically, but we now understand, because I think previously we would have understood that you have that gene and that's you, that's foretold and written in your life as that will happen. But obviously now we understand that that's not necessarily the only thing that will influence your life. Obviously nutrition being a big part of that. But where somebody has the recipe for lemon drizzle wrong or misspelled, is there a solution or a fix or a workaround for everything?
Not for everything, unfortunately, but what we can do is we can look at what that enzyme needs, as in cofactors, or which tend to be vitamins and minerals,
Yeah.
or some sort of enzymes are what we call dependent. So if you didn't have that vitamin or mineral, it couldn't act out its role. So what we can do is we can actually look at those and we can ensure that that person is eating those types of foods that have got perhaps either higher levels, or just ensuring that that person is eating those types of foods in the first place. And can I give you an example?
Please.
Okay. Because these words are lovely, but sometimes I find people just sort of go, yeah, but how does that actually work?
Of course, yeah.
And that's the lecturer in me, I guess, really. So let's say we're going to look at, or let's think about a gene that's called BCO1. Okay. Now, O is in the letter O. And it's all about beta carotene, effectively.
Okay.
Now, beta carotene comes or is in all of our brightly coloured vegetables, and that is basically our vitamin A from plant sources. Okay, we can get vitamin A from animal sources. Not beta carotene; it's just vitamin A from animal sources. Now, there is no gene that codes for an enzyme, i.e. For the vitamin A that is gleaned from the animal sources. So if you were to eat some liver, for instance, the liver contains the vitamin A and the body can glean that vitamin A from that liver.
What does glean mean?
Sorry. What that means is it can actually absorb and use that particular mineral, or vitamin. However, if we are going to rely, or if we are eating brightly coloured vegetables, which I'm sure everybody knows that we should be eating.
Yeah, hopefully.
Oh no, some people don't.
We can help though.
we can help you, absolutely. So if they're not eating animal sources, for instance, we've got this wonderful brightly coloured vegetables, but unfortunately, in order to utilise the beta carotene from these brightly coloured vegetables, there is a particular gene that codes for an enzyme that helps us to actually glean or use that beta carotene. Now, if somebody has spelling mistakes in that particular gene, then what effectively means is that our ability to actually utilise that beta carotene is nowhere near as efficient as we would like it to be.
So they could be eating all the carrots for England and not necessarily getting
as much as they should be.
Yeah,
absolutely. Now, they will be getting some vitamin A, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be alive.
Okay.
But it's the amount that you need for all of the body processes. Now, vitamin A is needed for eye health, thyroid health. Well, I mean, basically, I could go on, but loads of different places. So it's important. So this is not me saying you can't eat plant-based, absolutely not in any way, shape or form. But this is me saying, if you are plant-based, first of all, we've got to make sure you're not a bland plant-based. You've got to include those brightly coloured vegetables.
What would be bland plant?
Well, just sticking to green.
Okay, yeah. I like
green
greens.
only. Yeah, I like my greens, but you need to get the colours in. Yeah. And if you are relying just on your colours, first of all, you've got to have a decent amount going in. And secondly, if you do have spelling mistakes, and you have more spelling mistakes than perhaps others, then you might want to think about, do I need to have either a piece of, animal source vitamin A, or do we need to perhaps rely on some supplementation, because that will supplement what may or may not be going in.
It's really powerful, and I think so relevant. Like, everybody's talking about plant-based, and obviously plants are very important.
Absolutely.
But it really highlights how individual people are. And I think for myself, I may have told you this already, but I grew up vegetarian. I come from like 3 generations of vegetarians. And I never felt convinced as a child. And then going to school and studying nutrition, I found that's interesting. None of my teachers are vegetarians. And for myself, like I obviously, my parents come home and I practice eating just vegetarian again, but I really see my energy go down. And I don't think I've done any testing genetically to see exactly what you're saying. I've done other ones, but I think I feel so much better having, even just like a few times a week, having animal protein. It really helps me have better energy and just feel more vital. Yeah.
But I do feel it's an opportune moment just to say that how you are eating, if that's your beliefs are that you want to be a vegan, and your beliefs are you want to be a flexitarian, you want to be a vegetarian, you want to be a pescatarian, you want to be a carnivore, you want to be paleo, you want to be, this is all about, we talk about exclusivity in regards to humans, exclusivity in regards to food as well. So if you're listening to this and you are a vegan, we're not going to say that you can't do that, but it's very much a case of, and again, this is the individuality of nutrition, is the person sitting in front of you, what are their beliefs, how do they want to eat, and how can we support them?
Okay, another tricky question then is, without doing the genetic testing, do you think just seeing someone in clinic, you'd be able, I guess you'd have a clue as to, what somebody is not getting or what's not processing optimally, but you wouldn't have as much clarity, I don't think.
In my opinion, and of course it is only my opinion, but in my opinion, it gives me the full information.
Yeah.
I can work with people, and I have worked with, hundreds of people with no genetic testing at all. But I find as though if I include that and that client is very happy with that, it almost takes me to that. Not the next level, but I've now got everything in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as a practitioner, it's another tool in my toolbox. It certainly is not necessary, because I know there's a lot of people out there a bit worried about, their data and how that all works. But basically, I primarily look after athletes or practitioners that are looking after athletes, and they tend to be people that are quite driven. They want to know either to shave off that half a second in the sprint, or to help them with energy production over the length of a marathon or a cycle race or triathlon or iron person, that sort of stuff. So for me, it's that's that last little bit of information.
Yeah.
But I'm fully aware that we can obviously do consultations without it. If a client says no, that's absolutely total respect to them, no problem. But it is useful.
Yeah. No, I agree. I've done a bit myself, and I find it helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, now would be a lovely time for you to tell us about Team Gene, how that came about and what you do. And,
So Team Gene came out of COVID, really, because as I guess really half of the world, pretty much had no money coming in. And, I'm no different from many other people, but I had just finished my master's in nutrigenomics. And I say I'd finished about 4 months previously. I was slowly getting over that, because doing any qualification, you take time to sort of get over it. Yeah. Just physically as well as, mentally as well.
Yeah.
And I guess really it was the opportunity. I had time on my hands. I was able to plan and look into this. I just, got my qualification. It was almost as if somebody had said, right, You're just about to get off of the Ferris wheel of life. Everything is going to almost sort of be, still for 3 months. Obviously, we didn't know that at that time. Why not use that time to actually do what you're now trained in and have always been interested in? So that's literally how it was born.
Amazing.
Effectively. And, when you're faced with absolutely no money coming in, it's a bit of a driver, really.
Yeah, definitely.
So, and then I sort of thought to myself, well, I'm at that stage where I've worked for, throughout the whole of my life, I've worked for other people. Now you've got the qualification, now you've got the expertise, now you've got the years in clinic. This is the perfect time to do it. So I thought I took that challenge.
Amazing.
So I set Team Gene up, lucky enough to sort of know roughly how to do it because, just throughout the people that I know, you ring people like, how do you do this? How do you do that? That sort of stuff. Of course, they were at home as well. They were, so it was brilliant.
Yeah.
And so it was born. So primarily I initially, concentrated on athletes. And I chose athletes because they have that drive.
Yeah, a bit more dedicated.
Absolutely. And once they've made their mind up, they do the test and you go, right, you need to incorporate X, Y, and Z, and they will incorporate X, Y, and Z. Yeah. Or they'll say, why am I doing that? And they'll go, these are the reasons why. And they'll go, right, I'll go and do it then.
Amazing.
So, it is almost like an ideal client. Not to say that there aren't people out there that aren't driven to do that.
Yeah.
But it's a subsection of that, that they. So I started out there, and then I've now sort of reined back what I would call the one-to-ones from that, because obviously you do the genes, you got to give them all of the information. So I now sort of attract practitioners who are looking after athletes. So I train them, so it's one person, and then they obviously, incorporate that into their practice.
Yeah. Oh, very cool.
So I've really enjoyed it. I've really, really enjoyed it. And it's the first time I've actually run a business for myself.
Is it?
Yep.
Oh.
Always sort of worked either contracting or other people and that sort of stuff.
Okay.
I'm never going to be a millionaire out of it. And that's not the point of this particular company. And, it's literally, there to take on clients, I guess, really that I want to work with.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to make loads of money. That's not the point of Team Gene. It's the point is actually running a business, attracting clients, working with them, and then basically, that's how I go.
So are you open to hearing from other athletes or mainly just practitioners at this time?
I don't mind either. That's not a problem. Either or, that's no problem. But I've gone more towards the practitioners is because it's almost sort of training one person and then they can train the others. But no, I have no problem in helping, the individual.
There's quite a few companies today that operate for like a, more general public. I actually did through my work a Bupa related kind of genetics thing, but I found it very generic and not so helpful to me. But there's a few obviously that focus on like specifically as well genetics in terms of like the right exercise type for you, or just caffeines and your your chronological cycle. I'm not saying the right word, I can't think of it, sorry, but I'm a bit so the nutrigenomics world, we only cracked the DNA code, I think it was 2003. So it's only 20 years and a bit ago. Yeah. Now, in the science world, 20 years in normal is like 5 minutes. Yeah. Because it's really not very long. And 20 years ago, they thought that once they cracked the code, they had cracked the human. They knew, they knew this was going to be the answer.
But actually, once they realise what they got, it actually just, it doesn't, you know, you've got to understand what the answers are. And this is what, over the last 20 years, people obviously been studying and doing research and all that sort of stuff. And so, of course, to make genetics commercial, they want, you know, companies are obviously offering things that people that are interested in, and chronological age, or aging in general, or, you know, how are you suited to this particular type of exercise or that type of exercise, all that sort of stuff. It's lovely. And of course, I'm not saying that anybody is not right in what they're doing, but I'm always a bit cautious of, you know, the nutrigenomics is actually all to do with the food. It's not really, you know, out there to tell you, you know, how long you're going to live and, you know, that sort of stuff, because we haven't cracked that yet. We don't know how that works. So, so Team Gene has gone more down the sort of individual pathways, as in how, you know, perhaps estrogens are produced, or thyroid health, or things such as, you know, how we detoxify, that sort of stuff. There are many companies out there that will give you information, but it's pretty useless until you actually know what it actually, how, what to do with that, really. And so, so not to say that the companies out there aren't doing, you know, some super work, but I would choose wisely in regards to what do you actually want to get out of genetic testing.
That makes sense,
And so if you can answer that and a company fits that, perfect, go with that.
I think it's quite unique with food as well, because it means that it's something you can evolve with, as opposed to it being like, well, you're only suited to doing cardio exercise for the rest of your life, so just do, you know, it's something that you can adapt and work with.
I have obviously in the industry, I know of at least 3 athletes who have run multiple genetic testing because they just want to know that bit up from that company, that bit from that company, and all that sort of stuff. And 3 of them apparently have come out from a genetic testing perspective to be endurance only, right? They can only, they're only good for endurance. Well, these 3 athletes are the best sprinters.
Interesting.
That we know about. So, so it's not there yet.
That's really interesting.
So you know, if somebody says, "Oh, you should only be doing this and only doing that," I always sort of say, "Okay, are we there yet?" Nutrition-wise, we are more, and because we know nutrition far more than being able to predict if somebody's far better at doing endurance or you know, sprinting, for instance.
It brings in such a good debate. It makes me think of the film Gattaca. I don't know if you remember that. It's pretty old. It's about 20, gosh, maybe more than 20, maybe 30 years old. But it was set in the future, kind of dystopian, where especially like around having children. I mean, it's kind of very close to the present, but people were able to sort of see the fetus in utero and be like, oh, well, make sure they've got blue eyes and take out of this possibility of XYZ disease. And you had a world where people were engineered, essentially. And the story was around 2 brothers. One of them had been engineered and one had been born before that. And one had a heart condition, the non-engineered one, but was always trying to outlive or outdo his diagnosis as such. And it was a beautiful, I guess, struggle throughout the film to see if he could. And I like that debate. I think it's really interesting. Because as much as we can get very prescriptive and being like, well, it's written, it's clearly down there in your code that you can only do X, Y, Z. It's, you know, there's the factor of the human spirit, or just being able to.
Yeah, the other way that I see it, and I love the scientific world. I'm in it, you know, and but I do know that there are some sort of limitations, and particularly when we're looking at research or studies, you know, there are millions of really good studies out there that have been designed well, and you know that the participants are, you know, whatever it might be. But even now, you know, science or research itself is more about getting a bunch of people together of various ages, mildly the same, you know, sort of, and obviously, you know, those participants go through the trial, and then we get an outcome. Fine. But unfortunately, in the science world, they don't believe in n equals 1. And as humans, we are n equals 1, because unless we are, identical twins,
We're all individuals.
we are all individuals.
Yeah.
So this is why genetics is only part of the picture. Because even if you and I, we got to this office in the same car, the same journey, the same length of time, I was driving and you wasn't. So the outcome might be different, and your experience of that journey will be different because I was driving and you weren't. Now that's not a major difference. We're both in the car, we're both sitting next door to each other. We both see the road ahead of us. We both can see the traffic lights. But I've got a different, you know, response to those stimuluses than you have. But we're made up of two completely different people. So this is why. This is also why, you know, we do need to have genetics. We need to have bloods. We need to understand, how is that person eating now? We need to know a really good case history, you know, medical history, backgrounds, you know, if you know any parents' histories, that sort of stuff. And then we can literally just piece it all together. And that's what nutrition sort of does. From a food perspective, we look at the food you're eating, the environment you're in, and of course, obviously, the lifestyle that you have. And it's all about picking and putting all that together. And again, genetics is part of that picture.
Yeah, that's a really good way to sum it up. Yeah, I definitely agree. It'd be interesting if, I mean, I know with AI and developments in science, if all of healthcare could become completely individualized. I doubt that will ever happen, but it's kind of slightly moving towards that. But yeah, interesting.
And any sort of advancement into that, I would welcome, because from my understanding, and of course, you know, we don't know where all this is going to go, but you know, from my understanding, if we can make those simpler tasks easier and more efficient, more effective, then but I'm probably of an age where I might just leave the young ones to do the AI stuff, and I'll just, you know, leave them to it.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think it's been a really interesting conversation. I've got one sort of closing question, which is, what is the one thing you'd like to see change in the next 5 to 10 years? And I think, it could be around any of these sort of topics, but.
Wow. Okay. In the next 5 years, change. I would really like for everybody, however we're eating, to respect how those other people are eating. As in, there are, you know, we have some very strong groups in this world, and quite rightly so. You know, you haven't been able to get access to what you need and all that sort of stuff. I would just, if somebody is it goes into, I don't know, a store or a restaurant or whatever, and they want to eat, and it's a healthy way of eating, not an unhealthy way, but they are a healthy way of eating, is that the two opposites can actually have a conversation and understand either side's, opinions and reasons for doing the differences without them sort of really getting upset about
politicized and
yes. Because if we can all live together, then we should all be able to eat together.
That's a lovely sentiment. Yeah, I like that.
And if we can all eat together, then we can all become more of a community. And if we're more of a community, then life gets easier. So that's what I would really like in the next 5 to 10 years, is that you may have your persuasions, you may have what you want to eat. Perfect, lovely, go for it. No judgment. But somebody else will have something else and it works perfectly for them.
Yeah.
So why can't the two actually coexist?
I like it. Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you.